Chair now recognizes Mr. Elliot Mainzer, Administrator of the Bonneville Power Administration, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. I am Elliot Mainzer, the Administrator of the Bonneville Power Administration, and I'm pleased to be here to discuss the administration's budget proposal for fiscal year 2016. I'd like to begin my remarks with an overview of BPA's financial condition and then touch on high-priority policy and strategy issues for the upcoming year. Bonneville Power Administration's ratepayers repay with interest the debt on the federal investment in the Federal Columbia River Power System. We finance annual costs primarily through power and transmission revenues and our Treasury borrowing authority. In fiscal year 2014, BPA made its full scheduled Treasury payment of $991 million. It was Bonneville's 31st consecutive full on-time payment to the U.S. Treasury. Bonneville's most important strategic priority is to maintain and enhance the reliability and value of the Federal Columbia River Power System. As this critical infrastructure ages, replacements and upgrades will continue to increase operational efficiency and provide needed capacity and capabilities, ensuring that the region has an adequate, reliable, and low-cost power system well into the future. Bonneville also invests to fulfill regional commitments for energy efficiency and fish and wildlife restoration. I will continue to work closely with our customers and other stakeholders to optimize uses of capital across our various asset classes in a way that is sustainable in terms of customer rate impacts. And to ensure we have sufficient access to low-cost capital, we are supplementing our Treasury borrowing authority with other funding sources, such as third-party leases. However, we recognize there are limits to these funding tools. Through our capital investments, we are continuing our legacy as the leader in high-voltage transmission in the Pacific Northwest. BPA is constructing 2 500-kilovolt transmission lines to serve requests from large generators, including wind projects. And we are completing environmental review for another large transmission project to improve system reliability. A sizable portion of our transmission system is on federally managed land. Last year, we had the opportunity to share with the committee our experience managing our rights of way on these lands. We continue to work with the federal land management agencies in support of their goals while ensuring Bonneville is able to maintain a reliable transmission system. In another effort to improve reliability and relieve transmission congestion, we continue to make progress with the members of the Northwest Power Pool's Market Assessment and Coordination Initiative. This collaboration of diverse public and investor-owned utilities is exploring more efficient use of generation and transmission resources through tighter coordination of system operations. Reliability is also at the heart of our investments in physical and cybersecurity. We are committed to complying with NERC's critical infrastructure protection requirements. We're applying the Federal Information Security Management Act standards to grid operations equipment by NERC's April 2016 compliance deadline. Beyond our responsibility to preserve and enhance our physical assets, we are responsible for mitigating the impact of the federal power and transmission system on fish and wildlife. Bonneville's strategy builds on the strong foundation we have established over many years and will take us several years into the future. Our strategy focuses on the Northwest Power Act and Northwest Power and Conservation Council's Fish and Wildlife Program, the Endangered Species Act, and biological opinions covering both the federal hydro system and the transmission system, as well as the historic Columbia Basin Fish Accords. Our strategy continues our commitment to improving salmon and steelhead runs in the Columbia and Snake River Basin and uses the best available science. It also embraces our effective implementation through state-of-the-art hydro, habitat, and hatchery actions, along with valued partnerships with tribes, federal and state agencies, and conservation groups. We are now achieving the highest rates of salmon passage in the nation. Our hatcheries are conserving wild fish and bringing back sockeye, chinook, and coho salmon to places they have ceased to occupy. And most important of all, we are seeing adult fish returns at levels not seen in decades, so much so that in 2014, there were fisheries open from April through November in the Columbia. We are facing a potential court decision on the biological opinion later this year. Although we cannot predict the outcome of this litigation, we are cautiously optimistic that our strategy will be recognized as comprehensive and beneficial across all life stages, with results in recent years that show its success. This concludes my remarks, Mr. Chairman. I certainly look forward to responding to any questions from the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mainzer. The gentlelady yields back. Mr. Newhouse is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here with us. A couple questions, regionally speaking, will direct to Administrator Mainzer as well as Commissioner Lopez. And for both of you, first of all, I don't think anybody's, I'm sorry I haven't been here the whole period, but I don't think anybody's brought up the Columbia River Treaty negotiations. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. certainly one of the issues that are a priority facing both BPA and Reclamation as well as the Army Corps. Would you agree that the regional recommendations reflect both a careful balance between the interests of power, flood control, ecosystem protection, and that it does reflect a regional consensus?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. Yes, I would agree strongly with that characterization. That recommendation was developed over 3 years of active negotiation with regional sovereigns and other stakeholders, and I believe it represents a very balanced view on the modernization of the Columbia River Treaty.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner, you're relatively new, but do you have any comments as well?
Representative, I know that we have been working closely with BPA and the Corps of Engineers to help shape that, and we do think it represents a balance, an appropriate balance.
Thank you very much. Mr. Administrator, if the treaty isn't updated, could you talk a little bit about what the costs of the region may be if that was the case?
Yes, we certainly believe that the Canadian entitlement, which is the compensation back to Canada for half of the downstream benefits of the flows out of Canada, has become imbalanced. It's economically imbalanced to the tune of multiple millions of dollars per year. And we believe that it is imperative that we move forward as expeditiously as possible with the negotiations with Canada to address that imbalance.
Thank you. Commissioner, do you know when we can expect the State Department to make its decision on whether and how to engage Canada?
I think I may defer that to Mr. Mainzer. I think he's in a better position for that.
Fair enough.
Certainly, as the chair of the U.S. entity, we are seeing some signs that there is an increased amount of activity within the State Department and the National Security Council, and we're hopeful that within relatively short order, they will develop a strategy for engaging with Canada.
Okay, thank you. For either or of you, there's been a recent proposal, I understand, to reintroduce fish above Grand Coulee. And given that this would have impacts on both the Canadian and U.S. interests, would you agree that the treaty discussion is the best place to, or a most appropriate forum to consider this proposal?
I would agree with that. That the framework that we developed for approaching Canada to study the reintroduction of fish above Grand Coulee and Chief Joe was a very it was a very detailed negotiation. I think it was an appropriate framework, and we think that that is the right approach to take to see the level of interest in Canada in conducting such a study. Mr.
Administrator, BPA's had significant rate increases over the past few years, and while I understand the need to ensure system reliability, as well as investing in infrastructure and meeting fish and wildlife obligations, could you describe for me any steps that BPA is taking to prioritize spending and capital investments to maintain the economic value of the FCPS?
I'd be happy to. As the administrator at Bonneville, I'm acutely sensitive to the rate impacts on our customers, and we have been working very diligently on a number of fronts. I would say that first and foremost, we've been examining all of our programmatic areas. We conduct a number of public processes with our customers to solicit their input during our rate cases. We've also been putting new personnel and new asset management techniques in place, which I think are going to help us bend some of those cost curves. And I would say most importantly, perhaps, we've been working much more closely with the Army Corps of Engineers, with the Bureau of Reclamation, to develop a 20-year asset investment strategy for the federal hydro system so that we can conduct a much more efficient and staged investment strategy for those assets. If we're not able to bend those cost curves and look for ways to make those investments as efficiently as possible, we're going to have issues on our hands, so I feel a tremendous sense of urgency around that.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you both for your answers, and my time's about up, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.